$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is Super NES Podcast, episode 160 this time. Your two regular co-hosts are here with you as always. I'm Greg. He is Joe.
Hello.
And we are looking at one of Joe's picks this time around. A game I assume Joe had some nostalgia for because he was the right age when this came out, but apparently off mic he doesn't. So what's the game you picked for us, Joe? And what was your motivating interest in wanting to cover it?
Well, I won't hurt anybody's ears, so I'll just say, real monsters. Yeah, I swore I had played this on the Sega Genesis, but when I booted this game up, it didn't look familiar. Like, obviously it has the aesthetic of the cartoon and whatever else, but it just, nothing clicked with me. So I, of course, had to go load the Genesis ROM to make sure that, maybe they were different. It's possible sometimes they did that. There were different games for different systems. But no, they were the exact same game. And music's better here, obviously. But yeah, it must have been some sort of fever dream or something in the last 20 years where I saw a video or something. But I swore, I had this false memory that I had played this game. But in actuality, when I started playing it, I quickly realized I never played this game before, and yeah, it was an adventure for sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are other monster-like games on the system. So maybe you just played something very similar to this because there are.
Yeah, this is a very unique art style, though. Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because I thought the same thing.
Yeah. So I mean that. Yeah. So I mean, there's a reason for that because for people out there who don't know, this game is based upon the cartoon that ran Nickelodeon for several years. Nickelodeon has a very unique style with their animation. So I mean, shows on Nickelodeon. So did you see the cartoon? Someone air, Joe? Is that why you kind of maybe?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right, yeah. Yes, I figured. When this came out, when this came out, I was already too old for it. I was in college, so yeah. I mean, I knew about the show, but the show, but I'd never seen it. And the animation style, is pretty unique for it. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is early Nick in a nutshell.
Right.
I mean, you got Ren and Stimpy, Rugrats, you had this, Rocko's Modern Life. They were really going for a totally different audience than most places at the time.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, so the cartoon was on for 4 seasons, from 1994 to 1997. Some decent, well, so I say decent, I mean, some experienced actors and actresses did some voice work for the show. So, including Jim Belushi, Tim Curry. So, definitely high production value. Obviously because the cartoon was popular, they wanted to make a game based out of it. So, the game came out for both Super NES Genesis, as already mentioned before, in 1995. Both the game does a pretty good job of following both the art style and the overall plot that the cartoon has. Because both the cartoon and the plot, you're playing one. As both the cartoon and the game, there's 3 monsters who are friends, who attend a school for monsters in New York City. And they basically have two basic So they basically have two big assignments: going above ground to collect items, and also like scaring humans. So, scares count as class assignments, like for them. So, the game follows pretty much the same plot idea behind it. So,
quick little side note: this was the last Sega Genesis release, which I found very interesting. And also, this was the last game to be made on a Nickelodeon property until Rugrats on the PlayStation, which was almost, I think, like 3 years after the fact.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was crazy.
So this was the last North American release Genesis title.
Yes,
I thought that was Frogger. I could be mistaken about that, but I'll have to look it up later on then. But
I was gonna say I got my Google machine up. I'll fact check that.
I don't know as much about the Genesis. I don't know as much about the Genesis libraries. The library, like the Super NES ones. I can't say for sure, but yeah, this game was this. But yeah, as far as Super NES goes, 95 was like midlife cycle for the Super NES. There's still a lot of good games coming out after this. So anyway, so so the game was developed by Real-Time Associates and published by Viacom New Media. Viacom is the same media conglomerate that owns Nickelodeon, so of course they're going to publish the game. But Real-Time Associates we have covered before in the podcast. But look at my notes. I realized we talked about it way back on the Q*bert 3 episode with Ferg, like way in the first few weeks of the podcast, like years and years ago. So I'll spend a minute here just talking about the company. Real-Time Associates is one of the oldest video game developers still around. They did back in 1986. They were formed by a bunch of ex-Mattel Electronics employees who also worked on the Mattel. Who also worked in the Mattel television in the games floor. So they already, if they already were experienced programmers. They made numerous games for numerous systems over the years, over 90 games period. They also made some series games. They also have made some games for the Games for Health franchise. Which basically is kind of designed to help kids with things like cancer, and whatnot. So, a lot of their games obviously because they're a developer. A lot of their stuff is licensed stuff. As far as original games that they've made themselves that are very well known. They made some Gex games. They made Crusader No Remorse, which is a great game. No matter what platform the platform that's on. They developed Star Wars Return of the Jedi for the Game Gear, and also the Game Boy. Frank Thomas's Big Hurt Baseball. Mostly just a lot of licensed stuff. Good in reports too. Pretty high quality of the company usually regarded for. Super NES, they published a bunch of other games. They also you mentioned Nick. They also developed Beavis and Butthead as well for the system.
Yeah, they did Beavis and Butthead. They did I think, if not all, at least a couple of the Ren and Stimpy games.
Yes. Yep.
They definitely dealt with licensed properties.
Yes. Mostly, not always, but mostly, yeah.
Right. So, by the way, you are correct. Somehow Frogger for the Genesis came out in 1998. So
yeah, I covered that with Super NES. Yeah, I covered the reasons. I covered the reasons why for that, my episode. In the part on the game, but I think it was just it was a case of it was a case that they got their license for cheap and decided to just shove it out there. So
yeah, it makes sense.
But at least the Genesis version of the game is a straight arcade port, which is good. The Super NES game is a complete reimagining of the game, which is not very good at all. So Definitely better. Yeah, so definitely better than the Jenny. But anyway, yeah. The game itself is an action adventure. There's an action adventure platform game. Now that that's already mentioned, mirrors the overall look and feel, as well as the overall story of the story of the cartoon. You get to pick one of the 3 main characters to play as, and you're given a mission to go out there, and you have your exams, and you basically just have to go up above ground, find various items, and scare people by defeating bosses. There's 4 stages in this game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but these are very long stages. So, it's a very long game for platformer. I mean, not long in terms of like overall games, but you know, but anybody who listens to this podcast in the past knows that the average length of the platformer is like about an hour, give or take. This game tends to clock in anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete. So definitely a bit longer than your typical platformer like of the era. And not helping the matter any, there's no passwords. There's no passwords. There's no battery to save your game. So you have to go through it all in one swoop, unless you use a cheat code stage select, which we'll get to cover at the end. So, but yeah, it's a very long game not to have any kind of feature to let you come back to it later on. So, but anyway, yeah. So, now that once you realized that this game was not what you thought it was, Joe, how'd you, so what do you think about it overall?
I mean, overall, it was an okay game. I can't complain too much. One of the biggest issues I personally have with the game is that it reminds me of Lost Vikings, and I don't know if you've covered it on the show because we
haven't.
I haven't looked through the archives in a while, but yeah, I will save most of my critiques for that game when we do cover it. But I will say I am not a fan of that particular genre of game. But this game also doesn't, it's not held to the same standard that game is. So it takes that concept and that idea, but it's so sloppily, I guess that's the word, I don't know, sloppily, executes that idea that it breaks down so quickly. This entire playthrough, I pretty much played as Ickis and no one else, because there was no reason to switch characters at all. Unlike Lost Vikings, where there is a point why each of your characters have certain abilities, and you have to work together. And actually, that was actually one of the things that I found disappointing about this game is the whole thing about the cartoon. It was that they worked together to complete their assignments at the Monster Academy, and it's like they're helping each other get through life. And it's really that whole you can rely on your friends sort of thing. And this game tried to do that, and I applaud them for trying. But like I said, it breaks down so quickly once you find out that because Ickis is the highest jumper. Throwing your projectiles, you have a limited number, but it doesn't matter. If it hits 0, you could still throw your projectile, and I never had an issue. It didn't seem like it was weaker or anything else, and if it was weaker, I didn't notice, and you can just do your jumps and get away from getting damaged and be able to still kill the enemies. So to be able to actually use all 3 characters and being kind of constrained to that, I think would have made it a bit of more of an interesting game. But I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
And Crumb's ability made me cry because it was a really cool animation where you can use Ablina as a golf club to hit his eye ahead, so you can kind of scout out what you're gonna do. But in all actuality, you can move the camera already kind of a little bit anyways, and there's nothing too surprising that you need to use that ability. It was so disappointing because Crumb is a great character, but in this game, he was completely useless. Never even thought of switching to him.
Yeah. So okay. So let me add on to that like a little bit. First of all, I apologize. I gave the wrong number earlier. There's actually 7 stages. There's 7 stages on this game. So that explains like why it's so beefy. 2, I do agree with you somewhat of like with the 3 characters. There are differences between them, however. Maybe just didn't. So I don't blame you for not picking up the differences because you have to actually.
Oh no, I know there's differences. I'm just saying, like, like Ickis is literally like he's overpowered.
Right.
He's like playing Mario 2 with Luigi. You know what I mean? Like you can just jump over everything. You don't need to use anybody else. Obviously, I don't know.
Yeah,
and like I said, Crumb having like the tiny little hop that he does, like he is useless. But
yeah. There's 2 things the characters. There's 2 things the characters do differently. The jump being one of them. I agree. So I agree with you like with the jumping abilities. However, I did find that because Crumb's jump is so small, he's very useful in tight places where it's like you only want to jump so high to get over somebody, but not hit anything above you like spikes. So that's when and like Oblina can it jumps. Oblina, because she jumps almost as high. Oblina is the girl, right? I think I got that right.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Because she's but she's the tallest. So her tall ability actually allows you to get a little bit higher in the air overall than Ickis can because of that height. So she's able to grab some things further in the air that nobody else can. The triple monster moves that the monsters can do is also different like for each one of them. That's the other difference between them. You already mentioned what Crumb can do with the eye. Ickis' ability is a far jump. Which you can use to help them get across the otherwise passable chasms, and Oblina can be used to help them climb up obstacles and cliffs that again otherwise would be done ordinarily. So So I agree. So overall, I agree with you. I do wish there were more differences between the monsters. I'm glad there are some differences. But I kind of think they should have been done but as it is, you're basically encouraged just to play as your favorite monster most of the game, and then just like switch over every now and then when you have to use somebody else for a limited time, they immediately go right back because there's no incentive for you to stay. So a lot of games have done that, incentivizing you to change characters better than this one has, unfortunately. And also maybe just me, but I find the fact that all 3 monsters are on the screen at the same time is annoying. I kind of wish it was just like just one monster at a time, because it's like they take because it's like because you take damage, they take damage in theory. I mean, like they don't actually take damage, but you still see them like being hit, and it's like, come on, really? But so yeah, I'm just not a big fan of that mechanic.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, so first the controls. You're able to, as you open this game, like throwing trash, which is like, pretty cool. So, I do like how you can throw in most situations. Pretty much in place you can't throw like on ladders, unfortunately, but anywhere else you can throw trash, which is nice. So I will give the game that, credit for that. You also are able to find monster manuals as you go through the game, which use to perform scares. This is what you have to use to scare humans the right time, the right place. So you definitely want to make sure that you don't that you hoard those, like you don't like waste them. So the screen shows basically your heart, which is like a single heart that shows how many hit points you have left. When the heart's like totally drained, it's like you lose a life. So it also shows you how many lives you have left. It also shows you. You also have limited supply of what's called double trash. Which is kind of like which is basically what it sounds like. It just lets you throw two trash in the space in the space time of one. So, but you only have again you only have a limited number of that. So it's encouraged to use it for either boss fights or tough enemies. So, and then also it also shows you the signed prize, which is whatever they're trying to find on that stage that your teacher Grumble gave you that you're looking for. So, there are 2 difficulty settings in this game, scary and nightmare. I did not find that to be very balanced, unfortunately, because like I thought scary was too easy and nightmare was too hard.
Agreed.
So, it could have probably used some more like playtesting, like a little bit. So, you can also like do a sound test, music test, and also like change the controller buttons. So, and also change the controller buttons around like you want to. So, anyway, so so the game's a pretty typical platformer and a platform like in most senses. There are some unique aspects of the game that as I mentioned before, like for example, the 3 monsters that work together, as you mentioned before, Joe, the teamwork aspect and whatnot.
Yep.
Trash versus double trash, the monsters like unique ability, having to actually like find books to scare humans at the right time and place. Right. There are some unique ideas to this game. So, and like you mentioned before, the graphics are gorgeous. The graphics really do look straight up. The graphics really do like straight out of the show. Like a lot of attention to detail that they paid to those graphics.
I agree.
Music was all right. Did you recognize any music from the show? I didn't know if they used any licensed music or not.
I don't know if they used the licensed music, but it sounds very much like the music they would use in the show, which, I mean, this company is actually pretty good at that. Like, all the Nickelodeon games that they made and would make, all used either music that was straight from the show or inspired by the show.
Okay, yeah. The sound effects, though, I didn't really find... the sound effects, though, I didn't like all that much. For some reason, they're kind of grating to me.
And it was better than the Genesis version.
Oh, I forgot we haven't mentioned this yet. The game does have, like, small samples of speech.
Yes.
Which I assume was taken from the show also, as well?
Yes, okay, that's taken from the show. Yeah. And, the screams are actually really cool.
Yes, they are. Yep, you're right.
I didn't expect them to be as dynamic as they were. So that was fun.
Right. So difficulty like before. I think the difficulty is not really quite well balanced before, because unfortunately, like I said before, the first one's kind of too easy. The second one's like too hard. So I played the whole game like the easier menu. So on the easier mode just to get through it. So. I mean, it's fine for what it is. The easy mode is good for kids, which obviously was the ideal target that this was aimed at. So, the hard level was kind of meant for like this really like tough platform people who are like very, very good at games. That's not me. So, at least especially not now with 45 years old and my reflexes not being like what they used to be. So, backgrounds are all good for a monster variety. Seem very different. No complaints there. The overall look and feel of the interface and the game itself is still like very well presented, of course. So, did you beat? So how far did you get in the? How far did you get in the game?
Well, I beat it.
Okay.
It took some time and patience, but I did beat it.
Yeah, save states definitely help. Like I said before, this is a game that really would have benefited by having by having like a by having this is the game that really like would have benefited by having like a password or a battery or something. So
right.
But anyway, I mean, like most platformers at the time didn't though. So I mean, I'm not gonna fault it too much for that. So.
Yeah, no, it is what it is.
But
it could be a lot worse. It could have been super broken, super cheap. Like I found like sometimes it was cheap as far as like enemy placement, and there was a couple times you had to do like blind jumps.
Yep.
But I mean, other than that, like I didn't feel like the game was cheap at all.
Yeah, I thought the collision detection was fine. It seemed fair. But the invincibility period was fine also. Yeah, I mean, like this company I mean, this company, Real Time Associates, is very experienced. They knew they were doing so.
Yeah.
The game itself is very programmed. The game itself is put together like very well. The main problem is just like, you know, overall, I think maybe, let me see how I can put this. I think overall they're focused upon I think overall they're trying to be so focused upon being close to the show that they didn't focus so much like upon some of the gameplay aspects. So
yeah, I can see that.
But because the complaints I had of the game were kind of the same complaints that reviewers at the time also had about the game. Because this game got very mixed reviews. Like when it came out.
Okay.
So like, you know, for example, that the high quality music and the voice work, of course, are praised. The graphics, of course, the graphics, of course, were praised. He said anybody a fan of the show that could definitely enjoy this. But you know, the level designs, the choppy scrolling, the weak backgrounds, the stiff controls, those were all kind of like commented on, and it's like, I agree with all that to varying degrees. They're all present in the game. All those things are done better and are done better like in our platformers. Right. So, like I said, I think the programmers were focused mostly upon trying to make this close to the show, and not so much trying to make it an absolutely awesome, amazing like platformer game. So. Right. But then again, it is licensed, and licensed properties are hard to make. I mean, like we don't know what we don't know what happened behind the scenes. We don't know how much control the company had over the game. Viacom may have been very strict with them about it. I mean, I don't know. So, not being super popular. I mean, well, let me rephrase that. The game was popular and that it sold very well, which reflects the pricing on eBay. But it wasn't popular enough that anybody's done like deep dive with it. So I really don't know the answer to that. But being a licensed game, I can only assume that Viacom/Nickelodeon must have had a good amount of creative control to look over it. So maybe they couldn't do like some of the programmers, you know, couldn't do like they wanted to do. But you know, I don't know. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So, So since you watched the show, Joe, did you think the game did a good job of capturing the spirit and the essence?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, you know, I the team aspect was really cool. With the having to use each and every character, if you chose to do that. Yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Did I love it? No. I didn't. This is very middle of the road. But yeah, I enjoyed my time with it. And, you know, if, maybe, it's a very big maybe, but, you know, maybe down the line I'll try Nightmare mode. But from what I saw online I saw a guy did like a playthrough on Nightmare, and he looked like he was pretty good at video games in general, and he was having a difficult time. So maybe it's not my future.
Well, I mean, you know, some people are very, very good at platformers. You know, so sounds like you enjoyed the game a little bit more than I did. Maybe because you have the actual background of the background like this game that I don't. Yeah. So
yeah, that's fair.
But you know, I agree with you. It's a decent platformer. It's not great. But you know, like I said before, I think anybody who's a fan of the show, or this art style would definitely, definitely gonna like enjoy this a lot.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so, I mentioned before cheat codes. There are several cheat codes present, like in this game. You have the so as I mentioned before, you do have the ability to be able to as I mentioned before, you do have the ability to be able to stage select, which is nice. So, there's also little cute eye candy things you can do with grumbones on screen. You know, for example, if you want to make him angry, you can hold R and down on the D-pad. Like, say you want to make his eyes blink, you can push like L and R together at the same time. So I think that. I think they just added added those in there just in case anybody got bored during the scene. It was just like mashing around the control buttons. So
Right.
You can also you can also use the code to hear the monster sounds on the title screen if you want to as well.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, so as mentioned before, this game seems like it was very popular and so well despite the mixed reviews it got. Because the game is very plentiful on eBay and it's pretty cheap. So, 60 copies of the game the game currently listed on eBay. 55 copies of the game that recently sold. Card only. These prices include shipping. The game sold anywhere from $6.50 to $18.25. So, pretty cheap for Super NES game. CIB more expensive, $18.50 to $40 was the price range I found for that. And then also for some reason somebody must have found a shipping crate because I just saw 4 copies of the game that sold recently that were all sealed. So,
oh, wow.
So I think somebody got a shipping crate at some point and it's kind of like just like ration them out little by little. So, as far as sealed prices go, they're not bad. They sort of were in the range of $155 to $248. So
I expected it to be a little less considering the price of a loose cart, but I guess the sealed market seems to be where collectors are headed right now.
Yes. So, but yep, and I will not share my thoughts about that right here because it's not the time or place. But yeah, so overall, a decent platformer. Better use the license than some other games I played before in the past. I'll give it that much. So you're definitely not the worst game I played. But yeah. So I just thought, if those issues had been fixed with the game, it could have been great. Unfortunately, but like I said, I don't know what the I don't know what. But like I said before, I don't know what. I don't know what time constraints or whatnot the programs were working under. So I will cut them some slack on that front. So, but anyway. That about wraps it up. So, if you have any questions, comments, feedbacks, game suggestions, whatever, feel free to hit us up on Facebook. Or you can also send me an email directly if you want to at the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can they get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at JOESUX30.
Okay. Coming up next on the podcast, as mentioned before in the past, we've been trying to arrange some co-hosts come with us for a while now. We've already had 2 of them on the podcast so far, and there's a bunch of other people lined up as the year goes on. We have our next episode like it's gonna be another co-host episode. Longtime fan and friend of the show, and somebody who's been on here in the past, Aaron Hickman, will be coming back on the show to talk about a game he's bringing to the table. I never heard it before until he mentioned it before, so this ought to be interesting. It's a game called Mohawk and Headphone Jack. So, we will get all into that next time around. Looks like an interesting game. I'll say that much.
Very interesting.
So, anyway, as always, we appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening. As always, stay safe. Take care for everybody out there. And I don't think I've ever watched anything on Nick, period. So, I have no idea how the network is nowadays compared to its golden.
It's not anywhere near the same.
A lot of folks have said that. So,
yeah.
But then again, how much of that's nostalgia talking?
No, believe me. Between the shows that they show now and it's just like MTV. You know what I mean? Like, there's a point where you can look at it and be like, okay, this is where the channel went down. So,
it is
what it is.
Okay. Well, all right. Thanks again, as always, for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you again next time. Later.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Deep power.